Hello, Dave Hurwitz at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk about the 50th anniversary of the Boston Symphony Commissioned Works list. Now, you may not think that that's a terribly interesting topic, but I got to tell you, that was some anniversary in 1930, because what the Boston Symphony Commission turned out to be, at least 8 of the 10 anyway, turned out to be very major works by their respective composers, and almost all of them have entered the basic repertoire. It was an amazing commemorative season, and I think it's fun to go through them all again and just know what they were and realize that this all happened in a year, all because of commissions by Koussevitzky and the Boston Symphony. So the first work on the list was Aaron Copland's Symphonic Ode. This is not regarded today as one of Copland's major works, but he regarded it as a major work, and in fact it is. It's a transitional piece in a way. It sort of straddles his early modernist period and his later more populist music. But if any of you have it and you haven't heard it, it's a terrific piece, and a very tightly knit, exciting work, and one well worth hearing. It deserves to be part of the repertoire, and it was unquestionably a major statement at the time. But the second work on the list, Howard Hanson's Romantic Symphony. I mean, we listened to that. Of course, it was in the film score to Alien. But, we play that piece now, and you wonder, well, where did that come from? This is where it came from. It was a Boston Symphony Orchestra commissioned for its 50th anniversary celebrations. And what a nice surprise it turned out to be. Now, the third work is called An Ode by Edward Burlingame Hill. And no one's heard it or heard of it, or actually, Edward Burlingame Hill is a name that barely exists on the fringes of American music. So we're going to have to put him aside for a moment. But next is another major statement. It's Paul Hindemith's concert music for strings and brass. It's a classic. It's a piece that gets played regularly still and deserves to. It's a magnificent piece of music. And I really think that, Hindemith is a composer now whose reputation has waned considerably over the course of the 20th century. But that he was a great composer is unquestionable. I actually did my first master's thesis on the subject of Hindemith and Der Fall Hindemith, the Hindemith and the Nazis and Furtwängler and all that stuff. Very interesting topic, actually. But this is another work that sort of initiated his second manner, one of the works that did anyway, one in which he mixed his modernist tendencies with a more populist sort of lyricism. And of course, the finale even has its jazz elements in it. Hindemith with as much of a sense of humor as he was actually able to put into his music. A great piece. Then we have Arthur Honegger, his First Symphony. Now, Honegger's First Symphony doesn't get as much play as, for example, the third or the fourth, or even the fifth. And the second, of course, for trumpet and strings is also fairly popular. But the first is for full orchestra. It's a wonderful work. I do wish it were played more frequently than it is. You usually only find it in those, complete sets of all the Hindemith symphonies. And it's a shame because it's really, really enjoyable. It's got a finale with sort of a Sorcerer's Apprentice catchy tune in it, da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba ba. Never mind, I can't do it, but it's great, and it deserves to return to the repertoire or get into the repertoire if it hasn't yet. It's been recorded, so at least we have an opportunity to listen to it and enjoy it. Next was a piece by Serge Koussevitzky himself in Overture, and he was listed as anonymous for the occasion. But that's who it was by, and it would kind of be fun to hear that again too, wouldn't it? Then we get Prokofiev's Symphony No. 4 in its first version. That's a piece that, it's based on his ballets. It had a troubled history. As you know, it exists in 2 versions. The first more balletic version and the later sort of more heavy-duty socialist realist versions. But either way, it's a very enjoyable work. It also appears more often in complete sets of Prokofiev symphonies than alone on concert programs, but it's a good piece, and it was commissioned by the Boston Symphony in 1930. After that, we have Ottorino Respighi's Metamorphose. Now, that was a piece that nobody had heard of until Jeffrey Simon recorded it for Chandos. I mean, it was absolutely out of the repertoire, but it seems to be coming back. At least as far as recordings go, it's been done quite a few times now, and it's beautiful. It's a theme and variations on a modal tune. It's kind of like, the Enigma variations go to Italy. It's that kind of a piece. The variations are very characterful. The orchestration is Respighi, so it's absolutely delightful. It has like organ pedals in the end to give it a little extra oomph, and it's a terrific work, one that seems to be returning to favor after a long time in the wilderness. Now, the last two works are truly, truly major works. They're wonderful pieces. First, Roussel's Third Symphony, one of the classics of the French symphonic repertoire, arguably Roussel's greatest symphony, although I think the Second Symphony deserves at least equal billing. One of the things that is fascinating is that there are some works here that Leonard Bernstein later became extremely well known for promoting. One of them was the Roussel Third, which he recorded twice, and another was the Hindemith concert music, and you wonder where he was, when these works were first premiered, because this is where they would have first been heard, and this is how he would have known to adopt them into his own repertoire. And finally, last but certainly not least, Stravinsky's Symphony of Psalms, one of the absolute shattering masterpieces of 20th century choral music. It's interesting, isn't it, that both the Stravinsky and the Hindemith are written for unusual forces, just strings and brass for the Hindemith, and of course the Stravinsky has no high strings at all. It's all winds and brass, cellos and basses, and a couple pianos. But my oh my, I mean, isn't that a magnificent anniversary tribute to the Boston Symphony? I think this list tells us two things. First of all, how sharp Koussevitzky was, but more than that, you hear over and over again the same old story about, classical music is dead, there's no great music being written. That's just bull. There was tons of great music being written. I mean, in the 1930s, when you just think that for one commemoration by one orchestra, you had a big chunk of the standard repertoire of contemporary music composed all at once by living composers who were writing flat out masterpieces and would go on to write many more. I think it's a very, very heartwarming fact, and that's why I wanted to share it with you now. So keep on listening, folks. Thank you for taking part in this little chat.